You know, what's really cool, neat about this evening is the variety of the storytellers. You know, each one is so different. They really bring something unique to the table, all of them do. Our next storyteller is of French-Canadian heritage, and that's full of stories and songs. I have to tell you, though, I was a little put off when I first met him earlier this week. I walked up to him, I said, "Hi, my name's Steve. I'm going to be introducing you. What kind of songs do you sing?" And he said, "Don't ever ask me that again." And I really did. But I'm not making that up. He's going to be difficult. But after I talked to him for a little bit, I really warmed up to him because I thought I was the only one. But he hates social media. And I know it's a losing battle. I do too. I hate it too. Twitter, Facebook, if one more person sends me a picture of their lunch, my head's going to explode. But, so we really warmed up, and once he stopped hugging me, he told me about this t-shirt he has printed. It's got big letters across the front that kind of sums up his feeling about it. It says, "Don't blog my twit face." I thought that'd make a great bumper sticker, so. Please welcome the subtle and soft-spoken Michael Parent.
This is such a great space, man. These curtains would fit in my house. And they said I could have them, if only I could fit them in my backpack. Well, my parents did come from Quebec to the United States, and I thought it'd be appropriate in a town named for a French guy named Louis. Here we are in Saint Louis. To do a little bit of a song. I'll just do the chorus because we're kind of stuck for time. I'll translate, so no problem, okay? Temps en temps, du nanan, du nanan, temps en temps, du nanan, c'est bon. Once in a while, a little candy, candy. Once in a while, a little candy's good. That's all there is to it, basically, but I'll do it in time. Here we go. Temps en temps, du nanan, temps en temps, du nanan, c'est bon. Temps en temps, du nanan, temps en temps, du nanan, c'est bon. Once in a while, little candy, candy. Once in a while, little candy's good. Once in a while, little candy, candy. Once in a while, little candy's good. That's the chorus. I'll do the rest of the song for you, if in fact there's time. But I wanted to tell you this story. Okay, I want you to imagine a front porch in a busy town. I want you to imagine a little 11-year-old kid sitting there with a comic book. And I want you to think back to when you were 11 years old. And those of you who are not yet 11 years old, think forward. And I want you to think of who your heroes were, or will be, at the age of 11. You got 5 seconds. Okay, time's up. All right, so here's this kid, and he's on his porch, and the comic book is only a cover. He likes comic books just fine, but this comic book is just in case. Before he hears the rumbling of the big truck's engine, if one of his friends comes over and says, "Hey, Joe P, how come you're not at the basketball court? Huh? Over at the playground playing like you always do?" He could say, I'm just finishing this story here. It's really good. Well, the fact is that Joe Pete lives right in the middle of town. His father and mother, his 4 little sisters, his 4 sisters and brothers moved from Quebec to Clarkstown, Maine when he was, maybe 3 years old, maybe 4 years old. And ever since then, since he's the oldest, as long as he does his chores around the house, does okay in school, and doesn't get into any trouble, he can pretty much come and go as he pleases. And if he gets into trouble, the word will get back to his mama much faster than he will. You know those old kinds of neighborhoods. So, the biggest thrill in Joe Pete's life, well, other than being called Joe Beans by his papa, Chérie by his mama, and Tichou, little cabbage, by his aunts and grandmother, his biggest thrill in life is watching, it's kind of embarrassing to mention it, but he loves to watch the garbage guys. But the reason that he's missing his basketball games, see, you have to know something about Joe Pete, which is that he loves anything that has to do with coordination and skill. And that's why he's constantly on the basketball courts, okay? So he will practice all day. He'll go there, if he's alone by himself, he will practice dribbling without looking at the ball. He'll practice going under his leg, behind his back. He'll practice if there's somebody who comes and plays with him. He'll practice his no-look passes. He'll practice his right hand, left hand layups. He practices free throws. He'll practice his jump shot from halfway out. At the time, there were no three-point shots, but he would have practiced that anyway. So, the reason that he is waiting with a comic book on his porch is that there is something that has been going on in the last few weeks that is even more of a huge thrill than the wintertime parades of the Baba Green. Now, there's all kinds of parades in Clarkston, Maine. There's a parade of the Veterans Day Parade, there's a Dairy Queen Parade, there's all kinds of parades. The Dairy Queen Parade is the best one of all, because there's a Dairy Queen and she just kind of waves to all the people, and they argue as to which one of them, is it him or his best buddy Ray that she's waving at. And sometimes there are cows that follow along and they leave tributes on the for the Queen. And but he has been waiting on summertime Tuesday mornings, because that's when the garbage truck goes by. He has been waiting to see this guy who has been on the route for the last, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Now, this guy's name is Richard, and the only reason that Joe Pete knows this man's name is that he's heard the other garbage guys call his name. Richard puts pizzazz into the collection of garbage. Now, Joe Pete has always considered it great entertainment in itself to watch these guys take a can full of garbage, put it in the back of the truck, and then return it to the curb empty. Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's useful, isn't it? I mean, there's so many government jobs that aren't any use at all. But this one, then it gets filled up in a week or so. Well, I don't want to talk about it. Why'd you bring it up? So, Richard will do a little dance step on the way to the truck. Sometimes he'll swing the can in one continuous arc from the curb into the back of the truck. Man. Now, if you remember when you were a kid, you thought, I did anyway, that if somebody was out in the street or the sidewalk and you were on the porch, they could not see you. That's the way it is now when you're telling stories to a bunch of kids. They think you can't see them if you're just one person. So, Joe Pete, it never occurred to Joe Pete that this guy Richard would ever acknowledge him. But one time, Richard had just finished putting one of the cans, emptying one of the cans, then he flipped it a couple times, and he put it back on the curb, and then he waved to Joe Pete. And Joe Pete just waved back. And he began to be curious as to whether or not this guy did all these tricks when he knew that children were watching. So that day, he ran around. He knew the route of this truck, and it would just go around the block, you see? And he ran around, and he went under Madame Cloutier's clothesline, up the clay hill behind her house, over to his best friend Ray's tenement building, behind the door of which he could peek through the curtain and see whether or not Richard would do this if there were no kids around. And on the next street, there were hardly any kids. They were mostly at the playground, see? And he watched. And sure enough, Richard twirled the can twice, passed it around his back, put it on the curb, and then he loped. As the truck kept moving, he loped, and he jumped onto that little platform that they have in the back of garbage trucks. You've seen them, haven't you? It's only about a foot square, and he jumped on it ever so gracefully. And Joe Pete didn't have the words at the time, but if he could have said it, he would have said, "Now there goes an artist." Well, he kept watching Richard, and it seemed like Richard was inventing new moves as time went on. Sometimes he'd go behind the back, sometimes under the leg, before he brought the empty can back. And one time, he threw the can up in the air, it twirled 3 times, and he caught it with one hand behind his back. Oh, man. Whew. So things went on like this, and every Tuesday morning, he would watch. And one day, he got up the courage to wave first to Richard and the other 2 guys. He waved, and Richard said, "Well, hello, my chum. What's your name?" Well, my real name is Jean-Pierre, but everybody calls me Joe Pete, especially the big guys at the playground. And my mama, I don't want to talk about that. Hi. Hey, nice to meet you, Joe Pete. My name is Richard, and over here, this is Paulie, and the ugly guy driving the truck, that's Butch. Nice to meet you there, Joe Pete. Man. Whoa. It reminded him, I mean, I'll tell you this, but he wouldn't have told any of his friends. He wouldn't have told Ray or any of the guys at the playground because they might have laughed at him, see. But he was reminded of the day about 1.5 years before when he went to the Clarkston Armory and the Harlem Globetrotters were in town and they were playing the Washington Generals or some patsy like that. But they did these amazing things. And Meadowlark Lemon, do you remember him? Meadowlark Lemon was there. He was the clown prince of basketball. Now, about 3/4 of the way through the game, Meadowlark comes to the half-court outside line. And he extends an invitation to the kids. He says, "I need a volunteer to come down here and throw me the ball." Well, the arms went out of their sockets, volunteering. But for some reason, Meadowlark Lemon picked Joe Pete. And Joe Pete took that ball and he gave Meadowlark Lemon, I think, quite a good pass. And Meadowlark Lemon started this drill with the Harlem Globetrotters, and every one of those players must have touched the ball 3 or 4 times. And the routine ended with Meadowlark at mid-court. He dropped the ball onto the court, and he kicked it. And the ball sailed up toward the basket, hit the backboard, and went in swish. The crowd was astonished. They'd never seen anything like that. And Joe Pete stood there thinking he'd started the whole thing. Somebody had to tell him to go take his seat. Now, meeting Richard, his garbage hero, was pretty much, he had pretty much the same goosebumps as he had after he met Meadowlark Lemon. One day, he was coming back from basketball. He was taking a half-hour break for lunch. And he came toward his house, and he saw the garbage truck. It was a Thursday, so it wasn't the day when they were going to come by. It was a Thursday, and he saw the garbage truck parked and it wasn't moving. Now, the garbage truck was always moving along because these guys weren't getting paid by the hour, they were getting paid by the route. And if they finished their route, they could go home early. So it was very strange to see that truck parked there. So he walked past his house, he walked about half a block up Middle Street, and he saw what was happening. It was very simple. Richard, Polly, and Butch were just having their lunch. And Richard was sitting by himself on one of the park benches, and Polly and Butch were sitting on the other, and they were just munching on their lunch. So, Joe Pete, having had the answer to his big question, turned around, and he was headed back home. All of a sudden, he hears this familiar voice. "Hey, Joe Pete, my chum, come over here." He walked back, and he stood there somewhat tongue-tied, standing in front of his hero, Richard. And Richard said, "Well, sit down. What you been doing on this fine summer day there, young fella?" "I've been playing basketball, but I'm going to have my lunch like you guys." "Okay, wow. Hey, you guys, we've got a basketball play over here. Maybe sometime we'll play some 2-on-2, make it take it. What do you think about that, huh?" "Well, he beat you guys, you gorillas. Anyway, Joe Pete, so, you're going to play basketball, huh? Are you pretty good?" "Yeah, I'm okay. I practice a lot." "Good. Well, those guys have finished their lunch. We're going to have to go back to work pretty soon, but maybe you come here with your basketball and we'll..." "You what?" "I wondered if you knew what I want to be when I grow up, if you could guess it." Oh, I'm good at guessing. All right, you want to be a policeman? No? A fireman? No? A doctor? No? A lawyer? What's the matter? Don't you do good in school? I do okay in school, but I just don't want to be any of those things. Okay, do you want to be a priest? No? School teacher? No. I don't know, I give up. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a garbage guy, just like you. Richard looked down at his hands. He had his hands on his lap, and he said, "You do? Why do you want to do that?" "Well, see, my mama and my papa, they told me that you guys, you make pretty good money. You make as much as some of the people in the mills and stuff, and I didn't like the idea of working in the mills because my father had asthma and he never worked in, well, he's working in the mills, but I can see it's not good for him. And so it's a long story, but you seem to have a lot of fun and you're good at it." "Oh, yeah. You're how old? About 10, 11 years old? You call it fun, what I do, huh? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm 38 years old. You know what I call it? I call it making the best of it. And you ask your mama and your papa the difference between making the best of it and doing a lot better. Now, Joe Pete had no idea what to say. He started looking at his hands, and they were small. And he looked over at Richard's hands, and they were really huge, but there was a finger missing. Where there should have been an index finger, there was just a stump. And he kind of flinched when he saw that. "Joe Pete, it's okay, but I do have fun, but I don't want to see you 10, 15 years from now riding this garbage truck, okay? And your mama and your papa, they don't want to neither, okay? So, I'll tell you what, I gotta go back to work, but I'll tell you what, you come here with your basketball, me and you, we challenge those two gorillas over there, we're gonna have some fun. But for right now, fast break." Richard started loping toward the truck. Joe Pete threw him a perfect imaginary pass. Richard approached the truck, laid in the winning basket, and jumped at the same time onto that little platform. Well, they did play against Pauline Butch, and I have to tell you that games were quite one-sided. Richard was just as good at basketball as he was at garbagery. And later, I have to tell you that Joe Pete did not become a garbage guy. He became a high school French teacher and a basketball coach. But in some ways, he did follow in Richard's footsteps, because in some situations, he made the best of it. In other situations, he did a lot better. And he was always trying to invent new moves. But his wife, Marie-Louise, she really liked Richard. Oh, she never met him, but she heard all the stories about him. But she was probably the only woman in the whole state of Maine who didn't have to ask her husband twice to do a certain household chore. Thank you.